as we are hitting green on everything, we'll be good to go.
Sounds good, Cody. Thank you.
I love doing this too. Like finding new ways to bridge new gaps. Like,
Yeah.
so Job for Cody was like my first venture into content creation. And
Mhm.
like, you know, I built up my biggest following there. Like Twitch, I have like 4,500 followers. You know, my Twitter account has like 32. So that was like 7,000 people that like I just wasn't hitting with anything. And the second someone's like, yeah, you could do this, I'm like, what? Like I've been paying $25 a month for StreamYard anyways to get rid of their little duck symbol, the watermark. And this whole time I could have been streaming to like a whole different audience. And it's like, and I also at that same point realized like I've been streaming it in 360p and it had the option to do 720p. I'm like,
yeah.
Like 340 interviews later, I'm like, dude, I've been a blurry mess this whole entire time for no reason.
No,
So
you do good, man.
so far it looks like we are good. I'm just gonna go and just make sure that the notifications got sent out as well. So this should tag you in the tweet with our video live. Yep, perfect.
Nice.
So we are good to go as long as you are.
I'm good. Let's do it.
All right, let's get this party started in 3, 2, 1. Yo, what's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to yet again another fantastic indie creator interview. It's your KP Cody, and we're keeping it geekly with our new guest, Tommy Halls. We're here to break down Kingsville and everything in between. But before we dive into that, Tommy, how are you doing? Welcome to the stream today, man.
Hey, man, it's a pleasure to be with you, Cody. Can't wait to dig in. Just very appreciative, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm always appreciative of creators that want to come on and talk about their book. I had the opportunity. You gave me a free copy of this, and I was just like thrown back by I love violence. I love violence in comics, and I just love because I wasn't expecting it. And the way you twisted into the story was just like chef kiss. But Tommy, before we get into that, let's start with the basics of who you are and how you got into creating this book.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been a comic fan like probably most of your audience for a very long time. Remember riding my bike to my local comic book store with a couple of dollars that my mom would allow me to have. And back then, comics were about 50 cents, so you could walk out with like 3, with taxes and everything. So yeah, I mean, I've loved comics for a long time. Been in the grocery industry for almost 30 years. So yeah, haven't ever been able to create my own comic, but it's always been a dream. And last year, I actually had a kidney transplant and had a lot of time off. And during that time, I was talking to my wife. I'm like, man, I have this story for a comic book. I would love to test the waters with it and see if I can't create it. And my wife's like, well, now's probably the best time ever. So I started putting it down on paper, went on Reddit and was starting to interview different artists. And I found Daniel, who is amazing. Daniel Zay, who is the artist. He does everything, by the way. I mean, he does the penciling, he does the inking, so it takes a little bit longer because it's just him, but man, he is really amazing. And so we started putting the story on paper. I have about 6 issues written already.
Wow.
And we were able to pump out issue 6. I was off for 6 months, so I had a lot of time either watching Netflix or
all that in 6 months, Tommy?
Yeah. It's the longest vacation I've ever had in my life.
It's like the 50 years of experience was just like held behind by a dam, and it's like as soon as you got that little hole, just
yeah, that's pretty much what it was. But yeah, man, that Kingsville story's been in the back of my mind for probably about, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. And I was able to put it on paper. And man, Daniel did a great job on the art side of it, really bringing the story. Because, working with your artist, it's a dance, right? And if you're not on the same link, you might be trying to tell one story, but maybe the art's saying something different. And then it makes it a little confusing. I thought Daniel took the story and really made it come alive. So really proud of him and happy to be partnering with him. He's a young guy, about 23 years old, but I think he has a lot of talent. And I think he's going to be doing this for a long time.
I mean, lettering in itself is an art, and you're not only the writer of this, but the letterer as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's my first try as a letterer, so I've never done that before. My local comic book store, it's Diggers Comics and More. Ambrose is the owner, and he's been doing he does more cartoonist type stuff, but he has written some comic books himself, and he was a lot of help. So shout out to Diggers Comics out here in Hemet. I sent him copies, and he did some editing for me for free. And then he said, man, your lettering looks like crap. Here's what you need to do. And there's a lot of back and forth, and he really helped me out a lot. So I feel like I'm a much better letterer. But yeah, it's not cheap creating your own comic book. So I was trying to do it the least expensive way possible, and lettering yourself is one way to try and do it. So I was able to knock it out, and I think it came out all right.
Yeah, yeah. And maybe it's because, he told you straight. I think that's a big thing, is being able to tell someone like, hey, this, you could do better. That's a hard thing to do. You don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. But, a lot of times when, creators go that route where they do the lettering themselves, sometimes it's hit or miss. And I think you really knocked it out of the park with this. I mean, did you take like special classes, or were you just persistent in just getting better?
Yeah, I mean, YouTube, right? So
Yeah.
going on YouTube, looking at other, letterers or artists that do their own lettering, and just watching and listening, utilizing the same formats. And then obviously Ambrose over at our local comic book store, he's been doing lettering for different comics for a while too. And he sat me down and showed me some little tricks of the trade. So yeah, it was a lot of back and forth. He's brutally honest, which I love. Right, you
Yeah.
need that. So especially going in your first time, and if you think you know what you're doing, you're probably wrong already. So I went there, and he's like, "Yeah, you should do this," and I would not do that, and I would change how you wrote this, and it sounds too mechanic, and you should probably put a little bit more thought on. And I think I can still get better with that too. So your first comic's never going to be perfect. I know there's a lot to grow on, and I think issue 2 is just going to get better, and hopefully, by issue 4 or 5, right, I'm rocking and rolling, and it's making a lot of sense. And yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. I mean, that's the goal, is to get to at least issue 6 over the first year,
Hmm.
and see where it goes from there.
So we got Mama Geekly. Thank you for stopping in, Mama. Saying some awesome drawings. And how are you doing health wise? Prayers for you. I mean, holy crap! A kidney transplant, that had to have been like your do or don't moment, right? Like you're like, if any time to do this is now. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I work for an avocado oil company in San Diego. We work a lot of hours, right? So at the time, I was the chief sales officer. I was leading everything sales. I've since moved into a new position, but you're working 60, 70 hours a week, traveling 50% of the time. Yeah, the comic wasn't going to happen.
yeah.
But then I was born with a hip disease, so I've had quite a few surgeries over since I was 7, and it turned out that I won't get into it, but it turned out that I needed a kidney after all the surgeries and the medications that I was on, and some of the different stuff that went on. So I was on dialysis for a couple years. I was able to do it from home, thankfully. So I was able to travel and do my dialysis in the hotel and whatnot. And then a kidney became available. So, when those type of things happen, you have seconds to make your decision, and then you got to head to the hospital. So I guess that's a good way to get a transplant, is not knowing when it's going to happen, because when it happens, you can't think about it. You just got to do it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you wake up and you got a new kidney, and you're off for 6 months, right? Because you got to recuperate. So that slowed everything in my life down, which was great. My wife and I lived in San Diego for about 6 weeks after, because that's one of the things you got to do. And during that time, I just put pencil to paper, and put out the story. And man, everything's been good. Thank you for your prayers, and thank you for your thoughts. Everything's working out really well from a health standpoint. And not only that, I had that blessing, but I was able to create our first comic. So that was a lot of fun.
Dude,
And in my
holy
new position,
shoot.
I'm traveling less, so I'm able to spend more time on issue 2. So yeah, it all worked out, man. Things
That's
happen in life, and you just got to take advantage when they do, right?
a scary thing though, dude. I can't even put myself in that mindset. I mean, so did you channel any of that like into Kingsville? Like any of that like that you were just going through at that moment?
Yeah, not really. I don't think I did. I mean, maybe without thinking, there's probably some things in there. I do think as we move forward, some of that will be in there, at least the emotional side of it.
Hmm.
Life changing. I mean, we all go through life
Yeah.
changing experiences, right? And when you go through them, right, they do have an impact on you. And if you're a writer, you're a singer, you're any kind of artistic thing that you're doing, I do think some of those things come forward, whether you mean to or not. And
Hmm.
certainly, I think in Kingsville, something of what I went through will come through. But I can't really pinpoint anything off the top of my head. But I'm sure probably someone else that's a little bit more objective will probably see it. But
Yeah.
I didn't see it. You know what I mean?
So let's get talking about Kingsville. So on the cover, we have this big brooding guy covered in
Yeah.
blood. Who's this guy? Like, what's his story?
Yeah, yeah. So one of the things that I'd like to do after we have a few issues of Kingsville is to really go into maybe write some stories. I have some backgrounds of a couple of our leads within the comic, and that big guy, his name is Collapse. And his background is he's gone through a lot throughout life, right? He's always been kind of an overweight, kind of a big guy. Grew up in a really broken family, but was always very strong. And what the Alliance for Global Safety does is that they look for certain people that already have a lot of strengths that they could utilize for their own needs, and then they put them through this program where they receive this drug that gives them superpowers. So he was already quite a brute by the time AGS finds him, and they give him this drug, and it just it creates superpowers, and then he gains this ability, and his ability is he could collapse into like a pool of water. So he's this big giant guy, and whenever he wants, he collapses, and he could go up walls, he could kind of go under doors, he could do all these different
That's
things.
scary.
Yeah, it's very scary. And then as he comes back to form, right? He could come up with an uppercut. He could do all these different things, and he could just take your head off because of his strength. He's already
Yes.
the largest of the super humans that AGS has produced. And yeah, he's a scary individual. And he has all this emotional baggage that you'll start to see come forth in issues 2 forward, that really we didn't have time for in issue 1 to get into. We wanted to kind of show what AGS is, outwardly, right? They're this,
Hmm.
I kind of compare them to the World Economic Forum, right? They're these unelected officials that, on the outside want to do a lot of good. And I'm not saying the World Economic Forum doesn't do a lot of good. I don't want to get political, but what if on the outside they're saying they're doing good, but internally they're doing all these things just to benefit themselves? And that's what AGS is, right? On the outside, they're gaining all these nations that want to be part of AGS to take advantage of, trade deals, take advantage of, maybe one nation has, fuel, and becoming part of that nation, maybe they get a little bit better deal.
Hmm.
Like all these different things are happening as AGS tries to gain more nations into their AGS forum. And one of the benefits of becoming part of AGS is you get your own superhuman that will help within your nation, stop crime, do all these different things that they're supposed to do. But internally, right, AGS is out there utilizing them for their own benefit as well. And you probably saw that
Hmm.
as you get to like page, I think 11 or 12, when you have these people starting to rise up because they're saying, look, I don't think AGS is everything that they say they are. Well, AGS needs to squash those kind of uprisings, and they
Literally, though.
utilize the supers to do that, right?
One of my favorite scenes, we were talking backstage, like when Collapse takes his hands in and just smashes a dude's head. I was
Yeah,
like, dude, this shit just got real
yeah, it got
fast.
real, real, yeah.
And we have another person on maybe the cover, is it cover B or the variant cover?
Yeah.
And he
Cover B,
that was he was with Collapse. So let's talk a little bit about that guy because he's just as evil. Like, damn, dude.
yeah. So his background, so this is Snapback. His background is much different than Collapse, right? He was kind of a popular person growing up,
Hmm.
into sports, always like the lead, right? The head guy on any sport that he was part of, very arrogant. And because of that arrogance and his ability to kind of take lead, he is the leader of all the superhumans at AGS. So Snapback, his ability once he received that drug is, he could stretch his arms and legs, maybe 10, 15, 20 feet. And so what he did to make that even more evil is he has these shoulder pads that come to a point, and he
Hmm.
wears them on his shoulder. And whenever he gets into a situation where he needs to, squash a rebellion or maybe take out a person, he could take off those shoulder pads, put them on his hands, and as he shoots his arms forward, they snap back. But if he has one of those on and they come to a point, he could just put his arm right through you and pull it right back, and you're done. So his name is Snapback because of that ability, and he is the leader of the superhumans at the Alliance of Global Safety. So him and Collapse are utilized to squash a rebellion or an uprising that's taking place in the nation of Nabel, where actually Collapse is from. And that's that scene that you're talking about. Those
Yeah.
two come together and they make sure that they squash that right away. And you'll see in issue 2 how they kind of get away with it.
Well, I mean, I'm left curious though because there was one person
Yes, it
But
was.
I just loved Snapback right away. He's like, "Oh, you must be there." Whoosh, just takes
Yeah.
dudes. I was like, dude, these guys, yeah, and I love how you just get straight to action. Now, Snapback and Collapse, they seem kind of like the antagonists, but I really, really enjoyed the other two characters, Rodrigo and Marissa. We were talking backstage as well. This kind of seemed, they seem like your catalyst for how you're able to really build the exposition without dumping it onto the readers, and how you're able to really question if the Alliance for Global Safety is good or bad. For me, it felt like the AGS was kind of like a play on the UN, like how the
Yeah,
UN's
yeah.
always trying to do, and sometimes some of the stuff they've been called out for is rather devious. So I really liked how like it felt like a lot of like real life influences were like
Yeah.
created in this world.
For sure. I mean, there's a lot of influences. And obviously, I'm taking it to a much greater level from a corruption and evil standpoint. But yeah, I mean, Marissa and Rodrigo, they're both extremely intelligent. They were, very top of their class, and that's why they lead the science department at AGS. They both really want to do the right thing. Marissa, she is probably a little bit more oblivious to what maybe is going on outside of the four walls of the building that she works in. Rodrigo is starting to see things, so he's starting to question things.
Hmm.
They're very close. So they work constantly. They do go out once in a while together. There's no relationship there, but they are very close because they do run the science department together. And you're starting to see like little cracks in the wall. And Rodrigo's like, Marissa, look, I'm not sure things are the way we think they are. And Marissa's like, look, man, they've done a lot in my community. And they do a lot of good, right? Because they have to have that blend. But Rodrigo's starting to see things. And so he's questioning a lot of things, which is very dangerous to do, especially if you work for AGS. And I think she's starting to get a little nervous that he's asking so many questions. And also, some of the folks at AGS are starting to notice that he's not maybe partnering the way that they would like him to partner. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, we're kind of in a weird situation. He doesn't want to do anything too crazy, but he does want to see what Marissa's thoughts are of what he's seeing and seeing if she's seeing the same things.
Now, Tommy, this world feels so like in depth, and your world building is just so immersive. I gotta ask: are superhumans like are those naturally born in this world, or is it all just mined from that special element that was mentioned in the story?
Yeah, it's all mined from that special element, and the reason, and we really didn't get into Kingsville too much. We did speak about it a little bit, but there is a unique mineral that is found on the island of Kingsville, and it's called psychodone.
Yep.
And Rodrigo and Marissa, because of their abilities, were able to take this mineral and create a drug that enhances human abilities, and that's called Faradone. Once it's blended with all the other things, right, it becomes Faradone. But it's a very hard mineral to find, and it's only been found so far in one nation. And that nation is starting to get a little nervous about the power that AGS is starting to gain, and they're not as cooperative as AGS would like. So they have built this team of supers. We've only seen two, but there's a lot more that you'll start to see in issue two. And
Hmm.
actually, if you get to the last page of Kingsville, you start to see a picture for the issue number two, the cover, where you start to see some of the other supers that will be in that issue. But yeah, that's the drug. You have to have that drug in order to have those powers, and AGS right now controls it on the outside, but internally they don't have a program unless Kingsville is right there supporting them, and they're starting to get nervous because they're getting really low on that.
Ooh, I really really like that idea a ton, and at any point AGS can just go get it, right? Because they have. So
Good.
are all the superheroes are humans going to be evil, or like under the evil guise of the AGS?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think so. I think you'll start to see as we get further along in the story. You will. I mean, the reality is, right? Kingsville does have that mineral.
Hmm.
They don't know how to utilize the mineral the same way AGS does, but they're a smart people. They're a warrior nation. And I do think that they're going to figure it out eventually. And you'll start to see some some, I guess you would call them good guys, right? You could also possibly see some supers on the Kingsville or on the AGS side that maybe are like, I'm not sure I'm doing the right thing either, right? So I really want to create kind of a moral conundrum
Hmm.
in some of these characters where they have to decide as they start to see things, which way do I want to go? Because I think that's very relatable, right?
Yeah.
And I think in my own life, right, I have all kinds of instances where you do have to choose whether you want to take one path or the other, right? Obviously, not to that extreme, but
You
I
literally
think
had a life or death choice. I mean, you out of all people like that, yeah. I think you're hitting
yeah,
it home,
yeah,
man. Holy crap.
yeah. So we'll have to see what happens as we move further along. But you know, outside of the realm that we're talking about, I mean,
Hmm.
I've had these characters in my heart for a very long time, so I have a lot of them. Collapse and snapback were the two that I've had in my mind for a long time. Some of the characters, right? It's really hard. I think it's actually impossible to create a character that doesn't feed off of other characters that have already been built by Marvel or DC or other independents, right? So you want to put your own twist on them. So we have a few of those as well. But yeah, I got a lot of characters, and AGS is going to continue to grow as more nations come. Right, their agreement as a nation becomes part of the AGS family as they get a super to help within their nation do all these good things. And that's what they're worried about, right? They've made this promise, and nations are like, yeah, we would like to be a member nation. But they're like, guys, we're running out of this drug, and we're going to lose the support that we have been gaining because we don't have the supers to give these people. And
Hmm.
it's becoming a big issue. And that's why you're starting to see a more violent side take place because they got to keep their promise if they want to gain the power that they're trying to grasp.
I love just how many different layers are like wrapped in this. It's definitely one of those books. When you read it a second time, you start to like peel away more and more. So talking about the development of Kingsville and everything, let's talk a little bit about World at War Comics
Yeah.
as a publisher. What's that all about for you?
Yeah, so I mean, we wanted to create the book Kingsville, and I wanted to create a comic book company. Again, our first comic, right? So we're talking down the road, but
Hmm.
I love the indie scene, and I think because I'm a little bit older, and I have been in business for a very long time, I wanted to create something that possibly could become a viable business in the future. Right now, zero money being made on this. This is all passion, right? It's very difficult to make money off of comic books, especially when you're just starting, right? You got to build an audience, you got to build a
Hmm.
fan base. And I realized that. So I'm in it for the long haul. I took some of my savings and I put it into this company, created an LLC, which is World at War Comics, so that I could start creating comics under this label. But my goal in the future is to have a company where other creators could come and they could, like a creator own, like an Image Comics or an AWA, which I'm a huge fan of. I think they're one of the best out there doing it right now, where they could come and they could feel comfortable, like, hey, I could build under this label, but I still
Hmm.
own all my properties, my IP. And I want to be that for the India community because I do think right now, India is where it's at. And
Yep.
as you can see behind me, man, DC and Marvel are huge to me. They've had a huge impact on my life. But I think over the last 10 years, I've seen kind of a little bit of a creative void. And that's not a shot. If you were to throw me on Superman right now, which is one of my favorite characters, it would be really hard to create a story that hasn't already been told for Superman. And so you really need very creative people to think outside of the box to keep those stories going along, keep them being interesting. And that's very difficult to do. It takes a special person to do that. And I'm not that person, right?
Hmm.
But in indie, right, there's no rules, there's no guardrails, there's
It's
not
like the
this.
Wild Wild West almost.
It really is, right? There's not this 80 years of canon that you have to kind of hold to as you're building the story. And because of that, I think we're seeing an explosion in indie comics. And then you have like Comic Wellspring, Kablam. You got all these other companies that make it very easy to publish your own comic book,
Hmm.
that you're starting to see some amazing creators out there that are being able to put their stories on paper. And indie, I think, is about to explode. It already is, but I think over the next 5 years, you're going to see a shift from some of the big two, and I think that's what's really hurting them right now is all these amazing creators going. I could take my story to DC, and hopefully I get picked up by them, which is extremely almost impossible to do. But if I do, my IP's gone. Or I
Yeah.
could keep everything in house, build my own story, and
And
then
just
go to a
crowdfund.
yeah, exact crowdfund with Kickstarter or Indiegogo, or there's a bunch of them now popping up. And I could go to Comic Willow Supreme. They're super easy to utilize, and I could have my comic book and be successful without having to give up anything. And so you're starting to see this explosion in indie comics, which I'm super excited about. And I love it. I mean, I would say out of my collection, at least 60% of it is indie comics. I try to buy more indie than I do anything else because I really want to be like you, Cody. I want to be there to help pump up the indie comic scene. I think the more of us that could do that, the better our little community is going to be long term. And you're giving all these opportunities to amazing creators that really wouldn't have the opportunity if that didn't happen. So I'm really excited to be part of this community, and I want to be someone that helps to build it, not tear it down. So I try to keep things super positive on our YouTube and our Instagram and all of that. There's plenty of guys and gals out there that tear down, and there
Yeah.
needs to be some of that, right? Because if you're not doing a good job, someone needs to tell you, I'm just not that guy. That's not my style. I want to pump up, pump up, pump up. It's really hard to do, and I don't. I don't know. I love keeping it positive, and I love building up this community, man.
I mean,
It's
that's what
great.
it's all about. That's what it's all
What it's
about.
all
Like,
about.
I
Yeah.
just had like pretty extensive car thing repairs. Like my radiator cracked, and it was $720, and I was like, dude, I'm not gonna be able to back anything for a long time. And then I'm
Yeah.
like, I like yesterday, I was like, dude, but I could literally create a Ko-fi account, coffee, whatever. It's like a Patreon. See if anyone, hey, you guys want to donate? Here's a way to support me, and then use that money and back. And I literally did. I set up a goal. I was like, if I get $50, I'm gonna use all this money and back all my friends, and I did. And it was such an awesome feeling to find a way to overcome that and still, support the community, because that's what it's all about. Is finding ways, and that I feel like that is what indie in its like truest essence is. It's finding a way to get your idea out there. And a lot of times when they don't have this DC or Marvel branding, the creator has to work 10 times as hard, to promote that book, to get that book just heard, to get that title in someone's ear. And that's what keeping it geekly is all about. I don't care about a following size. I want to help you do that, because like that fight, that energy, like it's passion, it's invigorating.
It is. Absolutely. I mean, even we'll do another Kickstarter here in another couple months for issue 2. Although we've already started it. Once we go to like publishing, right, that starts to get a little expensive, and then obviously, getting those in front of the public. We have a website at worldatwarcomics.com, and we want to be able to post all that up there. But we'll do the Kickstarter, and what I'd like to do is like have the goal just to cover the cost, and anything above that goal, we want to reinvest in other Kickstarter and Indiegogos of indie comics. So that's my commitment to the community, is reinvesting, just like you, Cody. I think the more we could do that and more we could share resources, I think the better and stronger the community is going to be. And so I think that's kind of the path that we could take to really help one another. And man, if more people do that, I think we're just going to get stronger and stronger.
Yeah, let's go. Everyone watching, right there is the link to that website. Be sure to check it out. It's 100% free just to go there, 100% free to share it with your family and friends as well. Tommy, what's next for you in 2023? I know you said you're working on issue 2. Is it just this book for you, or is there any other projects up your sleeve?
Yeah, so I mean, it's this book for right now. I want to get at least 2 or 3 comics out, or issues, I should say, out. And then I'm going to work on a Collapse. We'll start to build out his story, because I think he has a pretty unique story, especially his upbringing. I think a lot of people can relate to his upbringing. And I want to kind of delve into that. That way you kind of understand why someone is the way they are, right? A lot of times you see these people and sometimes you just meet some ugly people, right? And I always like to think, how do they get to that point where they're just unhappy about everything? And when you start to dig into, not everyone, like I don't want to throw a broad brush out there, but when you start to dig into it, a lot of people have a lot of issues that have never been resolved. And the older they get and the longer those things haven't been resolved, that anger builds up, and it has to be expressed in different ways. And sometimes it's just unhappy people. In other times like this, especially when you're pumped up with this drug that's giving you superpowers, sometimes it comes out in another way. So I want to show that side of Collapse. And then I want to do the same thing with Snapback. And they might be like a one shot, or maybe a couple issues, like a 3-part series or something like that. I don't want to have this long time series, but I want to do that too, just to start to dive into the characters individually. That way, as you continue to read the story of Kingsville, you start to see the backgrounds of some of these characters and why they are the way they are. I think Rodrigo has an amazing background story as well, that I want to delve into. I purposely made Rodrigo Hispanic. My wife is Hispanic. My kids are Hispanic. And I just don't think there's a lot of characters out there that are Hispanic.
Hmm.
And so I wanted to create someone with that background. I grew up in a predominantly Mexican neighborhood. So I feel like I'm an adopted son. And so I feel like I could put a little story together that could really
Hmm.
show that type of an upbringing and, his ability to, hopefully he becomes some sort of a hero in Kingsville and helps out with all these issues taking place. So
Ooh, little
yeah, we'll
foreshadowing
see
there,
what happens.
Tommy.
Yeah,
All
yeah, we'll see
right.
what happens. I'm not sure yet. Yeah, I'm not sure yet. But yeah, I mean, the way it ends, right? We'll leave it that close, but the way it ends, right? There's a lot of that drug going around, and we'll see where it ends up.
So, Tommy, as someone who has waited a little bit of time before diving into breaking into comics, what would you say to anyone else who is wanting to do the same? Someone else who loves comics, is just waiting for that right moment, or just waiting for that kick just to propel them. What would you say to them just to help them get going?
Yeah, I think the first thing you do is you got to put your story on paper. Really put it down, capture all of it. I think that's extremely important. It's easier said than done to say, look, you just need to do it. It's
Hmm.
it's costly. I would say just roundabout, right? It's anywhere from $4,000 to $10,000 to put out your comic, right? Especially if you get a really good artist, you want to pay your artist really well. You could certainly do things on the cheap, but it's really dangerous.
Hmm.
There's a lot of people that will DM you once they see that you're writing a comic saying, "Hey, I'm an artist. Can I share your work with you?" I would say 90% of those people you got to be
No.
really careful with. Who knows who they really are and where that art's coming from. So, I've had work with a few of those people in character development. I think that's okay. But you got to be really careful. Also, you want to be careful that you're not working with someone who's stealing someone else's art
Hmm.
and saying they're one person when they're really not. There's a lot of fraud out there, unfortunately, because I think a lot of people are getting into comics right now. So, what I would say is find someone else who's done it before, DM them. Most people are going to be really friendly and help you any
Hmm.
way that they can, and they'll give you advice. But you definitely want to put your story on paper, get it out there, and then start testing the waters. Right, start digging in, finding out what it costs. I'm personally using Comic Wellspring. That's why I bring them up. They've been amazing to work with, super easy to work with, super quick turnarounds. The back and forth are really easy. The customer service is amazing. But there's other great ones out there too. I know Kablam I was looking at for a while too. And there's a much more. I mean, we could go into detail, but start to look into pricing, map it out first before you dig in because you don't want to
Hmm.
go halfway and then run out of money. So
Yeah.
take your time. And make sure you have a really good artist that's in it for the long haul because that's really important. I got really fortunate. I found my artist on Reddit, and we went back and forth for a very long time. And I know he's the real deal, and that's why he's on the front of the page. And he's actually working with issue 2. He wants to continue working with me, but it's expensive, right? You pay per page, and you
Hmm.
want to make sure that you have the funding to do it because you don't want to go halfway and then you're done, right? And you need at least 22 pages, I would say, for a comic book. So you could do the math, right? If you're paying $150 a page on the
Hmm.
low end, you could already tell how much you're going to have to invest. That's without, cost of printing. And then how are you going to get it to people? Uh, Building a
Yeah,
website's not cheap
distribution,
either.
promotion. And art, art's one of those things like it's when you go to a comic book shop, psychologically when you're looking, like mentally when you're looking on that rack, you're looking for something flashy to catch your eyes. You're looking for like something like the art to pull you in. So
Yeah.
art, and it's this is hit or miss, but sometimes art can be worth to put that extra penny into because visually it's just going to be like an evergreen for you. That book is always going to be there selling copies for you in the future. So sometimes that bigger investment can really pay off.
100%. Yeah, that cover needs to pop a little bit um, because you got to catch someone's eye in order to be noticed. And if you're on a rack with 150, 200 other issues, especially you're trying to get up there with Image, they have some amazing artists on their team. Yeah, you got to have something that looks pretty good in order to catch the eye. And it's a sea of comics, right? And people
Hmm.
walk into a comic book store. Normally, they already know what they're going to pick up. They might pick up a couple indies because maybe they want to try something new. But most of the people walk into an LCS, right? They already have a pull box, or
Yeah, yeah, like
you're buying
Batman,
you're buying
Nightwing.
a lot of things. You're fighting a lot of things, man. But yeah, that's why you want to make connect. I'll be honest with you. Indiegogo, Kickstarter. I did an Indiegogo, and it was a failure, man. I think my mom and two of my sisters were the only ones that did it. So thank you, mom, for being there. She
Shout
has
out,
no
mom.
idea what Indiegogo is. She has no idea what I'm doing, but she's always there for me. You know, you gotta love mom. But yeah, it was a failure, right? And it was very disappointing. And I think that is the same for a lot of people getting in your first time. No one knows who you are. They're not
Hmm.
trusting. There's a lot of fraud on Indiegogo and Kickstarter too. People say they're going to do something, they don't follow through. So you got to follow through. And then I waited a little bit. Then I did a Kickstarter after I built up a following. And that worked out a lot better. Again, being a little bit older, having working for a company for a long time financially, it's a little bit easier for me than probably a 20-year-old trying to get into it for the first time. And I have a lot of, support around me from marketers that are like, hey, you should do this, you should do that. So I have a few cheat codes that I was able to utilize that I would be more than happy to share. But yeah, it's not easy, Cody. You got to be careful and you got to map it out first, but it can be done. You gotta build up a good network of people that are willing to help you for sure.
I forgot what the quote is. Something about planning leads to success,
Yeah,
but having a good idea of what you're doing instead of just doing it is always, the route for success. Just like having a good game plan, scheduling it out, planning it out. It doesn't hurt to take an extra
yeah.
hour or two to really plan out your future. So, Tommy, outside of creating comics, let's talk about what you're reading, or watching. If you play any video games, like what are you playing?
Yeah, I mean, I play a little bit. I do have a PS5. So obviously a lot of the new Batman stuff that came out, I've been
Gotham
playing.
Knights?
Gotham Knights has been
Yeah.
amazing, a lot of fun.
Who was your
The
favorite
new
character?
Miles Morales. What's that?
Who was your favorite character on Gotham Knights?
Oh, Nightwing by far,
I,
man.
I,
I
I
love
used
Nightwing.
Batgirl. I loved Batgirl, like
Yeah, Batgirl's badass too.
because she could cloak and like the cameras couldn't
Yeah,
catch
yeah,
her. Yeah,
yeah. No, she's. I mean, they're all awesome, right?
yeah,
I
yeah,
just
yeah.
love the. Batman's a
Nightwing
huge
was
fan.
thick. Nightwing had some cake. The developers were like, you know what? We've seen the Nightwing run. We're gonna follow suit.
Yeah. I mean, I'm playing a bunch of different things. I'm not a huge gamer, but I do go on probably once or twice a week and play a little bit. I have 4 adult kids, right? So a couple still live with me. They play probably more than I do. My 26-year-old grew up in the heyday of Harry Potter, so we got the new Harry Potter game,
Hmm.
and she's powering through that, which she really loves. My son-in-law is a huge gamer, much bigger than me, but I don't know. There's a lot of different things. 40K.
Okay.
The shows are about to come out, so I've been going back to GameStop and buying
Hmm.
old games and replaying some of those that I used to play a long time ago, just to get ready because I'm really happy that
You know,
Amazon's gonna be
doesn't
doing
it?
something with Cavill.
Doesn't it feel good to play it again? But it's like, man, this shit is ugly to look at.
It really is, right? I mean, it's almost like going back to Super Mario Brothers on the old Nintendo, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of corny, but it's fun, man. You're getting into it, and like, oh, I remember this. But yeah, I'm not as big of a game. I know you're a big gamer, and you've had some really good shows with some people that are like really serious. I'm not at that level, man. I'm more on the comic side, like Scout Comics just had a
Mhm.
50% off sale over
For
Easter,
Easter,
so I
yeah.
yeah, you see that? I'm like, dude, that's crazy. So I got like
Wild.
30, 40 comics for like $28 or something.
Hmm.
So I'm getting into like Mega Centurions, which is an awesome comic if you haven't read that. It's about 4 superheroes that they end up saving the world, but then after that there wasn't a need for them, so they're all working these random jobs and they have these powers. It's pretty cool, man. It's a great story. But yeah, I'm digging into a lot. I spend more time, to be quite honest, collecting McFarlane. Marvel Select toys are the two that I really spend a lot of time
So jealous
collecting.
seeing you unboxing them, man.
Yeah, I
I see
love
your
it, man.
videos. You just have
Oh,
like
my wife
I
is,
have like a little shelf, and my girl's already like, "All right, you're spending a little too much." And I see your whole room. I'm
oh
like,
yeah.
I want to be this guy. Like,
Yeah. We just got to get old and start making some money and saving a little bit. I mean, it's going to happen to all of us, but
hey,
I'm
I'm getting
collecting.
there. I'm already turning 34 this year, so we're starting to
There
catch
you go,
up.
Cody. Yeah. Just so you know, Cody, I got a daughter that's getting close to that. But yeah, I just I've been collecting for a long time, and I love McFarlane.
Hmm.
I think what Todd McFarlane and obviously the others that started Image, but Todd, Jim Lee, some of those guys, what they did for indie comics, not that there wasn't indie comics before. I mean, there were some really amazing groundbreakers, but what Todd and the rest of the team over at Image did in 1992 when they broke away from Marvel and started their own thing, they really opened up a lot of doors for other creators. And so whether you like whatever they're doing or not, I mean, Liefeld, all those guys just were amazing. You got to have a respect for what they did because they opened a lot of doors for indie creators. And I think we're all standing on their shoulders. And so I love Todd McFarlane, always have, love Spawn. You know, I'm hoping that movie number 2 is of the quality that it becomes pretty amazing. It's going to be more horror forward, which I'm pretty excited about too.
Yeah.
Todd could get pretty nasty in his comics too with some crazy stuff, which I love. So I'm hoping that comes through on the movie. But yeah, I mean, that's what I'm doing. I'm reading a lot of stuff on the side and over the weekends, and then trying to do reviews to pump people up and give them opportunity. And then once I do a review, you know, I reach out to those artists and those writers and see if they want to come on, just like you, Cody. And then we'll just have a normal conversation like this, how they got into comics and what
That's
makes
awesome.
them tick and the things they're working on. And I think I'm not at your level, Cody. You're the master at this, man. So I watch you. Like, man, I gotta step up my game, man. You look at you. You even got the whole thing, man. Is awesome. Man.
I know. Trust me, my old lady is not very happy about how much all this costs. Like,
yeah. But I mean, that's what you have to do, right? You gotta, you know, spend a little bit money to do a professional job, but you do a great job at it. So you're definitely my pattern when it comes to doing the podcast. But yeah, it's awesome, man, and I love it. I love talking to other creators, love talking to folks like you that have a passion for it, and yeah.
Hey, I think likewise, I love comics. I love talking to creators, seeing how your guys' mind ticks. The creative process is so addicting. Like, I always tell myself I'm going to take a day or two off, and I end up doing 2 or 3 interviews a day. And it's like, I can't stop. Like, give me more indie. I'm hungry for it. But with that being said, it is time for us to wrap up. Everyone watching, right there is the link to check out the website. It's 100% free. I hope you all have a lovely Saturday. But most importantly, guys, keep it geekly. All right, give me 1 second. We're going to stop recording on all.